The Nerdcast Empire is on the air. We are back with another week of hard rock excellence on the Hard Rock Empire on this Sunday night, July the 20th, 2025. I am Matt in the studio. Great to have you along with us. We've got another great week of music. We're going to be taking a look at the best new rock and metal from June the 27th as we wrap up the music from the month of June and we head toward the month of July. Got a news headline to check out to start things off, and of course we'll feature those new albums from the 27th. We'll check out a couple classic albums in the vault, and then we'll get to our question of the week in the Power Trio, which will wrap up, as always, each episode. Joining me in studio, as always, is Mike. Mike, how's it going?
It's going. Apparently better than it is going for people in the Northern Kentucky University area, as all of my phone and my watch are blowing up at tornado warnings and whatnot.
Oh,
so
wow.
Yeah, good luck for you guys. Hope everything goes okay down there. But a good week of music. I think I left a lot on the table that I could have gotten into. I kind of found my two picks pretty quickly, and they ended up being even more interesting than I thought they would be just based on their sound. So kind of excited to talk about that. And at the very least, I assume these bands won't out you for cheating on your significant other when you're at their concerts. So that's always a plus.
I mean, possibly. We don't know that for sure. I mean, everybody has memed it in the last 48 hours. Don't know if we have any listeners in the Northern Kentucky area, but yeah, there is a tornado warning for Southeast Indiana, Northern Kentucky, Western Hamilton County, which is the city of Cincinnati. So if you're listening to our podcast, you're definitely going to want to do that in a safe location to make sure that you're not going to be in any danger. So kind of scary stuff there, but hopefully everybody will be okay, and we'll do our best to do what we do best, which is to entertain, and we're going to do that on this episode. And like Mike said, we will not be spotlighting anybody who might be out for a good time during this episode.
The lesson learned here is like better music. Don't find yourself at a Coldplay concert. That's step one. I'm telling you.
I mean that's not a terrible idea to maybe go somewhere else. I would think potentially, but yeah, it's I don't want to say they asked for it, but yeah, they were definitely there. Wrong place at the wrong time, but. Yeah, so interesting scenario. We will not be talking Coldplay on this podcast. It's not really a band that comes up in our wheelhouse, but we will be talking a little bit of metal news kind of off the top. And, you know, there wasn't a ton of interesting news this week, but since this is a band that we talk about a lot on this podcast, I figure it was maybe worth mentioning and just discussing a little bit. And that was the news that came out that basically kind of confirmed what we already knew, is that, you know, Megadeth obviously was not at the Back to the Beginning event in Birmingham for, you know, Black Sabbath's final concert, supposedly. And they were the only one of the big four that didn't have at least current representation in the concert. And I think me using that term may kind of clue you in on why the current version of Megadeth wasn't invited. And I'm sure you're going to get to that as well. But, you know, based on this article from Blabbermouth, which quotes James Lomenzo, he seemed pretty nonplussed about the whole thing, that it's just kind of like, well, those things happen and, you know, it is what it is kind of attitude. But I think based on some of the people that were involved, I'm guessing you weren't very surprised that this is kind of how it all shook out.
It's unfortunate, obviously, because not only is Megadeth one of the biggest metal bands in history, but, you know, they're a band who have covered several Black Sabbath songs over the years, really cool covers of songs like Paranoid, Never Say Die. But yeah, when you look at who's involved and who's kind of running the event, first off, I mean, I don't know if there's any kind of hesitation on Metallica's end to want to have Megadeth there, just, you know, old wounds and whatnot.
Sure.
Obviously, David Ellefson was there, and I can't imagine he would have the kind of pull to keep Megadeth off the bill, but he does seem to appear in a lot of these kind of collaborative events, so who knows. It's also possible that some of the other people just aren't necessarily big on Dave Mustaine. You know, when you have someone like Tom Morello running a lot of the collaboration and supergroup side of it, you got to think he and Mustaine probably don't necessarily see eye to eye on a lot of things. So I don't know. again, it's unfortunate, but I think at the same time, you don't want the celebration of Black Sabbath and Ozzy to become a Big Four concert. Because honestly, for someone of my taste, a Big Four concert's a bigger deal than Black Sabbath.
For sure. And
that's divisive, and a lot of people would disagree, but that's just from my angle. That's how I see it.
Well, and I think the other thing you don't want is for there to be such hard feelings at an event like that it derails the purpose of actually having the show, which is to honor Black Sabbath, to honor Ozzy, to do it in a good spirit. And not to say that Megadeth, there would have been disruption. You would hope that these guys are all industry veterans, that they could have found a way
for sure
to do it in a professional manner and understand that maybe not everybody's going to like everybody, but you're coming together for a cause. You're not coming together to talk about, your band. I did think it was interesting that there were rumors about some band, which, I saw Sharon denied it was Megadeth. She denied it was a couple of other bands.
Yeah, the initial reaction was they thought it was Iron Maiden.
Yeah,
because they knew that Bruce Dickinson had issues in the past with Sharon Osbourne, but she came out and denied that it was them. And then the other name obviously being thrown around was Megadeth, and actually Kelly Osbourne was the one who said, it wasn't them either. So still not sure.
Who was left? I mean, that's the people are going to be like going through the list of bands that you think like, okay, who?
Well, the net's so wide because you think who's left when you think of like classic metal bands, but when you look at some of the bands who were involved in the event, whether it be Fred Durst and Tom Morello and Billy Corgan and Dave Draymond, like there were a lot of possibilities out there. So any number of artists could have been the one in mind when it came to that. I think a name that kind of jumps out to me that it could have been, but I don't know. This is pure speculation. It would be someone like Motley Crue.
That would make. I mean,
they have
a
history with Ozzy having toured together, and I don't know. Not to necessarily think that they would demand payment for the event, but that is one of those bands that sticks out. That like you didn't really have a lot of bands from that era that weren't the Big Four thrash bands represented. So I don't know.
And the other point that James Lomenzo makes is that, hey, not everybody can get invited to the party. Like, at some point, you have too many bands. You have too many people there. Not to say that the people they left out, shouldn't have made it over people who went, but at the same time, you really can't invite everybody.
No.
So, I again, my guess is Megadeth probably wasn't terribly surprised that they didn't get an invite. That is the vibe you get from this article. But at the same time, I feel like they're pretty good at this point, and really kind of speaking for Dave, it's just like, well, that's just the way it is. And I don't think you're going to hear him come out and make a statement about it or anything like that. I think they're just going to go about their business, work on the new record, get back out on the road. I'm sure this, but it is, like you said, it's unfortunate because it is glaring when one of the biggest metal bands of all time isn't on a tribute event.
Yeah, and when you look at the names who were involved in some of the super groups they put together, you start thinking, man, it'd be really cool to have like Dave Mustaine and Nuno Bettencourt playing guitar together in some sort of capacity. That would be really cool. Or have Billy Corgan singing a Megadeth tune with Dave playing. Like just weird stuff like that you never think about, but an opportunity like that presented itself and you didn't get to see it.
Yeah, so we'll see. Hopefully somewhere down the road, there'll be more of these types of events as bands start to kind of hang it up and, maybe they'll get the chance to play on the next one. But it was an interesting story to me because it is so glaring that they weren't there. And really up until I saw this article, yes, there were fans that were talking about it, but it felt like it was kind of flying under the radar a bit. Maybe because people were just like, hey, we're just going to focus on the event and not worry about who wasn't there as much as, hey, it was great. Like,
I think when the story came out that someone was rejected from being part of it, like you can't help but look at the potential suspects and because of Megadeth's size and the past of Mustaine maybe not getting along with everybody, you can't help but it like in this case with Cherie Foglio interviewing James Lomenzo, you can't help but ask.
100%. It's a perfect opportunity just to try to confirm it. And again, some of those bands, some of the band members involved are never going to get along. The egos are just too great, and it's a shame because it's a little different than like bands that break up, because we talk about that all the time. Man, it'd be nice if they just get along because they're all getting older. And so just like, and I didn't do this news story, but there are rumors that Fleetwood Mac is going to get back together. I
saw that too.
So, that's a band that has had numerous just knockdown, drag out breakups.
Yeah.
And now it looks like maybe they're going to put their differences aside and get back together. Because
Once you no longer have all of the members living, like at some point you got to think there are bigger things than our egos and whatever issues we had throughout the years.
And you just don't know how much longer you're going to get the chance to do it with even a partial original lineup. So,
and I think part of like one of the articles I saw about that, or it may have been a different article, kind of mentioned that they're kind of having some weird popularity resurgence, Fleetwood Mac. Like, I'm not sure what that's about, but whatever.
I mean, it could be any number of things. There's so many of these shows nowadays that use retro music that we saw with Stranger Things, what that did to so many bands. Yeah. Cobra Kai was another show that used a lot of 80s type music, so that brought it back. And then TikTok, because that is such a music heavy platform that songs just pop up, and if they get into a trend, then all of a sudden a band becomes popular again after 30 years.
I just wonder if that's not going to continue, if not increase as the years progress, when anything made after a certain date, in the back of your mind, you can't help but think, is this real or AI?
Yeah.
Like, at least something that was created in 1985, is 100% authentic.
I mean, there's something to be said for that too, and I think there's also I don't know what I'm sure there is a term for it, but the term of you discovering something that has existed for 40 years, like these kids that were born in 2005,
like a second generation hipster kind of thing.
Yeah,
like, I found this. Like, well, no, you didn't. But the people who did, you probably have never spoken to.
Right. It's some sort of epiphany that they're having. Like, there's a band from the 70s called Fleetwood Mac, and they did all this stuff, and they were all having affairs, and
which is great that people are discovering it. But the problem is those people tend to end up making that their whole personality, and then they become insufferable. Don't do that. Like, understand that there's been good music made for every year. Like, every generation has something redeemable. You don't have to stop your listening habits after 1975. That isn't necessary.
And we hope this podcast is a way for you to find new bands to make your person. No, maybe not to that degree, but that's kind of, again, the point of doing this podcast, is it gives us a chance to see what is out there, because we've talked about it a lot, and maybe you're new to this podcast over the last few weeks or months, and if you are, welcome. Please tell a friend. Please invite people to come along, watch the VODs. But the one thing we've talked about, and we are now 74 weeks into this podcast, is neither one of us had any idea the quantity and quality of music that was being made now. I mean, obviously in the back of your mind, like, oh, well, there's bands out there, they're making music. I had no clue that there were this many bands, that there would be bands making music of every type, and it's coming out every week.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Maybe not July 4th. We'll get to that in a moment.
I pulled the music for the playlist for July 4th already. And honestly, just in seeing album artwork and like 2 seconds of the video before I move on to the next one, I think there's some promise just in like the 38 or 39 albums that are on that list. So, even on what appears to be a slow week, I think we're going to be okay.
All right. Well, that'll be for next week to find out. So you'll want to make sure you check that out. One thing I do want to post in the chat is our link to our Discord. Please join our Discord if you're checking us out and you want to kind of continue the conversation. We're continuing to try to look to build our Discord, so please do that. And also, when we go through each and every week and do our question of the week, we want to hear what our listeners have to say about that, because we have opinions, but even including like Chris, who's obviously younger than the two of us, there's still so many generations and years being left out. So we would love to hear from other people and other vantage points on these questions.
Yeah.
And again, as I will do in just a moment, each and every week I paste Mike's playlist into the chat, and you can go through and you can pick your favorite 2 or 3 new albums to check out. Go buy them. Go see these guys in concert. It's just a really cool thing. So we appreciate the support. Anything you can do that's free, feel free to do that. Obviously, sharing our posts, subscribing, liking our posts, whatever it may be. All that stuff doesn't cost a thing, but it is a huge help to us. Obviously, we do have a website. We do have a store, all those things. But again, all we ask for is if you can share our stuff, we would really appreciate that. But again, check out our website, nerdcastempire.com. Of course, we have lots and lots of stuff there, lots of back podcasts you can go back and listen to. Most of our Hard Rock Empires are archived on our YouTube page. They get archived for about a month on our Twitch page before Twitch makes them vanish. But YouTube is probably the best place if you want to go back and check out previous episodes. We'll be back again next Sunday night, 7 o'clock Eastern. Mike's already told you we're talking the music of July the 4th, and looks like maybe we're going to have enough music to talk about next week, so you'll want to join us next Sunday night at 7 o'clock Eastern. Again, very soon we're going to be updating news videos every day on our YouTube page, so you're going to want to subscribe to our YouTube page especially. That's where the content's really going to be flowing. And the hope is once our schedule kind of gets settled down, and by our schedule, I mean my schedule, we're also going to bring back the anime podcast as well. So lots of stuff on the horizon as we cross the 2-year mark of the Nerdcast Empire, which is pretty crazy, honestly. But it is time to get to the new music for this week. And as I just told you a moment ago, each and every week, Mike goes through and pulls a list of all the new albums for that given week. And this week, we are talking the new albums of June the 27th. And it would help if I wrote the word playlist before I paste it in there. And then Mike will go through and he'll pull a track off of each of those new albums. And then he goes through and judges them based on his music tastes. And then I will go through after he's kind of given them a once-over. And between the two of us, we will end up picking 2 new albums each to talk about on the podcast. If you're listening on Twitch or YouTube live, that's the best way you have a chance to get to hear the clips of the music. If you're listening on the VOD, most of the time the clips get through. If you're listening on the podcast network, which hopefully those will be updated soon, that we do not have the audio clips on there. So I think that pretty much covers, again, everything we've got. Honestly, I thought it was a really good week of music again. There was a lot of stuff out there. There was a lot of stuff that was good, maybe not spectacular, but not bad by any stretch. It was just solid. But I think we each came up with a couple of really cool albums to talk about on the podcast today. I did notice Baby Metal's got a new album that came out this week. The track I listened to off of that seemed all right.
I haven't been necessarily huge into their newer stuff. Yeah. And I think that album does contain a lot of the songs that they've released over the past year or so. Okay. So I just, not really my thing. Yeah. There are a lot better options this week.
For sure. I can't remember. Were there any other big acts? I think that might have been the only one that really jumped out at me this week.
Where did Let's see. Crystal Viper had a live album.
Yeah, there were a couple live albums out this week.
Let's see, what else did we have? Some sort of compilation from Motorhead.
Oh, yeah, that was the other
obviously
one.
Not a new album from them, but...
Which would really be news.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see, Sodom had a new album. Another one, the band Warlord had a new album, which was kind of a collection too, but their last album was really good. They're kind of the architect of the band passed away a while back, and they're still going on. So I thought that was pretty solid as well.
It was. The track I heard on the playlist I thought was really good. So, so there's lots of stuff out there. And again, a lot more stuff that we didn't pick that you can definitely check out on the playlist. But it is time to get to the stuff we did pick. And we will start things off with Mike. Mike, what do you have for pick number 1 this week?
Yeah, so when I saw the video on my playlist for this band, I thought, okay, this is something new. This is something interesting. I'm excited about this. I had no idea what I was getting myself into when I started looking into who these guys or this guy is. But my first pick is the first full-length album from an individual, but he is based in New York. This is according to the Metal Archives, a gothic and sludge metal band. It is Blood Vulture, and the debut is Die Close.
Yeah, I'm actually interested in hearing about this because you kind of teased this in the Discord that this was going to be interesting, so I'm definitely curious as to how it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, so every now and then you stumble into a band and you really have no idea what you're getting yourself into, and this is one such case. So Blood Vulture is the child of Jordan Olds. This guy, back in 2016, started making videos as this heavy metal talk show host, Arsenio Hall. He eventually got Patreon funding for a season of his late night show, 2 Minutes to Late Night, which is a great name for the record.
Yes.
Which ran on YouTube. When the lockdowns occurred back in 2020, he started creating remote video heavy metal covers with all sorts of different musicians. I saw Alex Skolnick from Testament was in one of them. Just any number of people. I watched some of them on his channel, and there are some pretty cool ones. I recommend the Mamas and the Papa Roach, Last Resort. Great cover. They did a cover of Hold the Line, which is really good as well. And they did a kind of a more metal-y version of AFI's Leaving Song Part 2 called Leaving Song Part 3.
Of course.
Really good stuff and worth checking out. But doing those ultimately led to a creation of a full album of original material. This album features guest appearances by vocalist Kristen Hayter, AFI guitarist Jade Puget, and Shadows Falls vocalist Brian Fair. Metal Archives labels this album as gothic/sludge metal, and yeah, I guess it is, but to me it feels like modern grunge music. It feels like if you were to take Soundgarden and Alice in Chains and throw them into 2025 to make a new album, this is something that you would get. His vocals, which I assume it's all just him based on the credits basically saying he does everything, just him overdubbing his voice, but he has this really cool Staley Cantrell harmony thing going on that he then with the guest vocalists will kind of take it to that next level. It's just a really cool sound. The album itself is really neat. It's not a super long album. It kind of revisits the whole Die Close theme several times, both in kind of the overture at the beginning, then an interlude in the middle, and then the finale, which is also the song they used for the music video I saw, which starts with this Muppet-looking character introducing the situation. It's so creative and not surprising given I've now went back and watched an episode of his late night show. It's just it's amazing. I don't know what else to say. It's ridiculous. But thoroughly entertaining. Standout tracks on the album include An Embrace in the Flood, Gray Morning featuring Jade Puget, Entwined featuring Kristen Hayter, Burn For It featuring Brian Fair, and the song that I picked. It's the one that I mentioned from that music video. It is the last song on the album, Die Close Finale.
Let's check this out. This is Blood Vulture with their new release, Die Close. This is the last track, as Mike said, on this album, Die Close Finale. Let's listen to a little bit of that now. Yeah, I definitely hear the sludginess a little bit, but not overpoweringly. I feel like each week we run into half a dozen to some weeks more sludge rock bands that are making music, and some of them are kind of tough to listen to. This is very much in the background. Something like an Alice in Chains makes a lot of sense because I guess if Alice in Chains was a melodic rock band, I feel like it's definitely more toward the melodic side of the vocals than what you get with Alice in Chains. I mean, and I love Alice in Chains. Just want to throw that out there. So that to me, that's a high compliment that they have taken kind of their musical formula base, if you will, but kind of put a even greater melody on top of it. Yeah, I'm kind of excited to check this whole album out because that sounds really good and it's definitely different for sure.
Yeah, and that's what kind of drew me to it is that it's not typically what I pick, but it's something that based on bands that I like, it's a great product of whatever his influences are that are undoubtedly things I would enjoy as well. The resulting sound is just you can't deny it. It's so good.
Yeah, I mean, again, it definitely you feel the influences from stuff that undoubtedly you like and probably I would like as well. But yeah, very interesting sound. Definitely interested in checking out more of Blood Vulture. Their new release out on June the 27th.
Check out that dude's YouTube page.
Yeah.
2 Minutes to Late Night. It's got some really wild material on it.
That's really crazy stuff. Definitely interested in checking that out. But definitely check out the album as well, out on June the 27th. As always, you have 2 picks each and every week. What do you have for pick number 2?
Yeah, pick number 2 maybe can't compare to the same kind of backstory as pick 1, but I think the size of their sound and what they're doing more than makes up for it. This is the second full-length album from an epic heavy metal band from Chicago, Illinois. They are Fer De Lance, and the album is Fire on the Mountainside.
Yeah, I'll be honest. When I saw this band name, I did not think I was going to then find that they were from Chicago, Illinois.
Yeah.
Because we just hear so many bands from everywhere in the world that immediately you just think, oh, they're French or they're something in Europe. But no, Chicago for this band.
Yeah, and these guys have been around a little bit. Their first EP came out in 2020. They had an album before this as well. But per the Metal Archives and Bandcamp, the lineup includes Rusty on bass, MP on vocals and guitars, Scud on drums, and Jay Geist on guitars. Their Bandcamp the bio on their Bandcamp refers to them as being the new wave of epic metal, going on to say, Fer De Lance takes you to untraversed lands on conquest bolder than many dare to go. The brave amongst you, this is your clarion call. So, reading that, I have to listen to the whole thing. And for the playlist, I picked the opening track, which is also the title track. And I gotta say, for second album, epic metal band, pretty ambitious to start your album with a 13-minute track. Like, you're really saying, hey, you're going to know about 6 minutes in whether you want to listen to this whole thing or not. And thankfully, the bet paid off, because at no point during that 13 minutes did I say, man, this just won't stop. This is never ending. No, the music kept me interested for that entire time. And once you get through that, you're like, okay, what else you have? Like, I'm ready to hear what the different length tracks sound like, where you're going to take me on this adventure. Because ultimately, with this epic metal band, that's kind of what you're doing. Like, it's not quick they're not writing Bad Religion songs. It's not 2 minutes here and there. It's a journey. It's an adventure, and I'm here for it. I think if I had to explain to someone what epic metal sounds like, it would probably be something like what these guys are doing. It's got this like high fantasy folk metal feel to it, but this just size and varying vocal deliveries. It's just everything about it is I'm going to go kill a dragon once I'm done listening to this. You can't help but not feel that way, or you can't help but feel that way. The album itself is 7 tracks and 49 minutes long, partly due to the one really, really long song. Standout tracks on it include Fire on the Mountainside, Ravens Fly, Dreams of Daedalus, The Feast of Echoes, Children of the Sky and Sea, and the track that I picked to listen to tonight, Death Thrives Where Walls Divide.
All right, let's check these guys out. Fer De Lance from Chicago, Illinois. This is their new release, Fires on the Mountainside. This is track number 3 off of that album, Death Thrives Where Walls Divide. So let's check this out now. But yeah, this is different too, just in a different way than the first one.
Yeah, absolutely.
I will say the 13-minute opening song that's a choice. Like, I feel like in the old days of music, when you would put on an album and just listen to it, nobody would bat an eye at a 13-minute song because you didn't know that it was 13 minutes. I mean, I guess if you were looking at a record, you could see the grooves and see, oh, well, this is In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida to start off this album.
Fantastic.
But I think when you start out with a track as strong as that opening track, I think that can actually, like you said, kind of play into their favor, because if somebody's willing to hang with you for 12:55 and it's good all the way to the end, then it's like, well, the whole album's only 49 minutes, so you've already listened to not quite a fourth of it or pretty close to a fourth of it. So it's like, well, now you might as well listen to the other 6 tracks, and then you find out the rest of it's really good as well. But yeah, I'm trying to, usually I can at least try to picture in my head like, oh, well, they remind me of this band. There really isn't one that comes up off the top of my head. There's a lot of, like you said, when you're talking epic metal, there is a lot of European influence there because there are a lot of epic metal bands. But to name one or two off the top of my head, I can't really equate them. They found something that's at least unique enough that I don't immediately think they sound like this band.
It's like there are, like, vocally you can pick some comparisons. Like, okay, sometimes it sounds like Dio, sometimes it sounds like Halford. They got kind of the death metal vocalist that picks up too, which adds a cool touch. But then when you throw all that together with what is basically folk metal behind it, it's like, okay, that kind of takes some of those comparisons back out of the equation. They're kind of doing their own thing, and it's not something you'd expect to hear out of Chicago, Illinois. You do mention listening to it on vinyl, and it's one of those things where I need to start working a little further ahead with my music discovery, because I noticed on their Bandcamp they actually offered a really cool like lava print vinyl copy of this album that's sold out. You can still get the standard vinyl, which I may do, but yeah, it is kind of one of those albums that you kind of think lends itself well to the vinyl listening experience.
That is the one downside. We run a couple weeks behind, which obviously we do because we want to make sure everything's out and there's no issues with finding materials.
Fumbling to find something because it hasn't been released yet.
Yeah, which has even happened being a couple weeks behind, but at the same time, if somebody has a special edition thing that comes out, by the time we get around to it, it might be gone. But that's good. It means clearly people are interested in this, which they should be. But definitely check those guys out from Chicago, which we love Chicago. We love going up there every so often. But Fer De Lance, good stuff from them.
That's 2 American releases for me in my picks this week. That's pretty cool.
That's good because we're about to leave America now. We're headed to my picks, and I've got 2 picks as well, and we are headed to Europe, and we are headed to melodic metal for my 2 picks of the week, and we're going to start off with some Frontiers, and we are starting with a Frontiers act. A second choice on this list this week that appears to be, by and large, a solo project. This is Nicklas Sonne with Electric Dreams. He's a Danish musician, vocalist, guitarist, and producer. He began as a drummer before moving to the guitar and then becoming a singer-songwriter, so not surprising that he's probably doing everything on this album. Started with the band Defecto, one of Denmark's leading metal bands, in 2010. Again, couldn't really find anywhere where there was any band members mentioned. He has worked with a ton of bands, which is typically kind of the Frontiers thing. You find these talented guys, and then you put them in as many projects as you can, and that is clearly what is going on here. But overall, it's really, really good. Dead Rhetoric's review of the album compared it to some of the songs compared to Judas Priest and Accept, while others were sounding more like Nickelback or Shinedown. So there's definitely some variety on this album. But in the end, at the core of it, it is melodic rock. So if you're a fan of melodic rock, and sound like Northern Kentucky's calling us back again, so that means the tornado warning is over. So if you're listening in that area, good on you. But if you're a fan of melodic rock, you should definitely check this out. It's really good stuff. Standout tracks include Limitless, Electric Dreams, Baron of Mischief, and the song we're going to listen to on the podcast is Route 65. So let's check this out now. Nicklas Sonne with his new release, Electric Dreams. This is track number 2 off of this album, and it's Route 65. So let's listen to a little bit of that now.
Let's roll back time, back to when we were in love into our mind. Cruising down Route 65, with beauty by my side. Nothing in my turning, our time goes right. The laughter in the air, it doesn't know the worries in the world to make me feel alive. Those were the
But yeah, again, as is often the case, we come across these solo projects, and these guys are just incredibly talented, and Nicklas obviously no exception to that. Really, really enjoyable album. Again, if you're into melodic rock, there's going to be a lot there for you to like. Mike, your thoughts on Nicklas Sonne's new release?
Yeah, I feel like this week had several albums kind of similar to this that were just really solid melodic hard rock, and this obviously is no exception. If I had that kind of talent, I'd be releasing solo stuff constantly, so I totally get it.
Yeah, and again, he's involved with a bunch of different acts, so if you like what you hear there, go to his webpage on Frontiers. It has a whole list of different bands he is or has been involved with, but here doing his own thing, and has put out a really good release this week, so definitely check out his new album on my first pick for this week. As always, we have 2 picks each, which means we're going to wrap things up with another melodic metal band. We are headed to another one of our favorite countries on this podcast. It is Sweden, and this is a new melodic metal band from Sweden. This is Heathen's Eye with Port Inspiro. So again, this is a new act out of Sweden, and this is a band that, again, has combined your AOR, your melodic rock, even some progressive rock, into what it does. And this is a band that, they kind of tout the fact that they clearly live in a very, far northern country, a lot of long nights in the wintertime, warm days in the summer. That's kind of how they're pitched by their record label. I think they were a Pride and Joy release. Band consists of Goran Hamren, who is the songwriter and guitarist, Jonas Jansson on drums, Mikael Andersson on keys, Ola Hellstrom on bass, and Rob Lind on vocals. This is another band that has clearly taken a lot of influences from your 80s and 90s melodic rock and metal bands like Queensryche, Accept, and Lynch Mob, but obviously they're looking to give them a modern twist onto that. The name of the album, Port Inspiro, is actually based from the Esperanto language, inspired by the past. It's a tribute to bands that have led them to this first album. For their first album, I thought they did a really great job. Really excited to see new melodic metal bands, and also excited to see them pop up on other record labels. Pride and Joy is a really great one we spotlight a lot on this podcast. But really cool. Kind of want to see where these guys go from here. But for a debut album, they have done a really nice job. Standout tracks include One Black Lie, Ghosts of Yesterday, Fire Priest, and the song we're going to listen to on the podcast is Mirror Man. So let's check these guys out. It's Heathen's Eye with their first album, Port Inspiro. This is the second track off of that album, Mirror Man. It features Stefan Norlander on this. So let's check this out right now. But yeah, just a well-rounded act. A lot of stuff you expect to hear in melodic rock, and great vocals, which kind of goes over the top of it. But overall, for a debut album, I thought they really did a great job. Mike, your thoughts on Heathen's Eye?
Yeah, I didn't realize. I listened to most of this and thought it was really good. I didn't realize this was a debut album. That's kind of surprising because it sounds very well seasoned as far as production goes. Really, really good sound, and kind of excited to see what these guys do from here on.
Yeah, always great to see new bands popping up on the podcast, and this is one you're going to want to check out. Keep an eye on Heathen's Eye, their debut release out on June the 27th. That's going to wrap up our new music for this week. And it's time to get into the vault, where Mike and I will give you a couple of classic albums that you need to check out. Mike is getting to the end once again, another pass through the alphabet on his vault, actually albums that he has in his collection, which is a very extensive music collection, and we are rolling along up to the letter T this week. Probably another letter that has given you some options there, but let's talk a little bit about the letter T.
Yeah, quite a few options there. First time around, the Alphabet went with the Trivium album, so wanted to stay away from that. I believe in the glam metal bands, I went with Tuff's album, which was really good as well. This one here, unfortunately, I don't have a whole lot to talk about because the band kind of existed for a fairly short period of time and then went away, and sadly are not together anymore. But what I'm talking about today is the second album from a Finnish power metal band. The band is Twilightning, and the album is Plague House Puppet Show.
They had a Facebook page. I don't know if it's the band's Facebook page. It claims to be. Hasn't been updated, obviously, in a long time. But
Yeah.
I remember you listening to this band. I don't know if I've heard this particular album, but I've heard a little bit of these guys. And it's unfortunate they're not around because they were really good.
Yeah, just an amazing power metal act. Unfortunately, they only had 3 full-length albums during their existence, and they were around from 1998 to 2009. Pretty sure there's another band I discovered either through streaming services or cable TV, the Music Choice channels. I can't remember if it was Diamonds of Mankind or Fever Pitch that I first heard from them, but I think it was one of those 2 songs. It was something from this album, and it was enough to get me looking into the album and ultimately owning all 3 of them. This album and its predecessor, Delirium Veil, definitely power metal to the nth degree. Their Wikipedia page mentions they drew comparisons to Ed Guy, Stradivarius, and Sonata Arctica. Not surprised about that at all. It's hard to put into words exactly how they differ from those other bands. I think part of it is Heikki Pohja's vocals. They're definitely unique in the power metal genre. If anything, I feel like their first 2 albums felt like Ed Guy when they were kind of mid-transition to the hard rock band Ed Guy from power metal. Both feel hard rock-ish, but different. It's hard to say, but they're their own thing for sure, and I really enjoyed it. Unfortunately, after discovering these guys, I found out they had a third album that came out in 2007, Swine Lords. I say unfortunately because it's different, but I still really liked it. But at that point, they kind of stripped down their sound a bit. It sounded more like 80s hard rock than power metal. It still had an edge to it, but it wasn't nearly as over the top as the first 2 albums, I would say. Still had songs like Isolation Shell, Swine Lords, The Gun. Really good songs, just not what their first 2 albums were like. According to their Wikipedia page, also, a driving force in their ultimate disbanding was a lack of motivation to continue. Like they just, I don't know if maybe they just hadn't broke through the way they had wanted to. Metal Archives did mention that the lead vocalist, Heikki Pohja, is also an actor, so I don't know if maybe his motivation and his goals kind of changed over the years, and that could have been the case with the entire band. Like you never know, 11 years and 3 albums down, if life hasn't changed for you and you just have other priorities, and maybe continuing on as Twilightning wasn't really that high on the priority list. Either way, they had 3 really solid albums. If you're into power metal, definitely check out the first 2, Delirium Veil and this one, Plague House Puppet Show. Swine Lords is good too, so you could listen to worse music for sure. Standout tracks on Plague House Puppet Show are tough to pick because the whole album is awesome, but you got the title track, you have Into Treason, Victim of Deceit, In the Fervor's Frontier, Fever Pitch, Diamonds of Mankind, Riot Race, Lubricious Thoughts. Just listen to the whole album because it's really awesome, and it'll have you kind of wishing these guys were still out there doing it.
Yeah, it's a shame. We have seen over the years so many acts like Twilightning that never really broke up. They just kind of continued on. They kept releasing albums overseas. Maybe we didn't keep up with them, but then then all of a sudden one of these labels that we talk about every week signs a band like that, and it's like, well, this is their 14th album. They've been out there still releasing music. Unfortunately, not the case with these guys. They did kind of go away, but you never know. I mean, who knows? As we see each and every week, the power metal is clearly still alive and well. Maybe somewhere down the line, somebody can get these guys back together again and get them back out making music if that's something they want to do. But
I think, too, how many times just in the couple years have we run into that band that, like, they were around until 1989, and then they just weren't around for 20 years and then decided to pick it back up again. Like, that's also a thing that I didn't realize was so prevalent, but we've seen it more than a handful of times.
I don't know if any of the record labels listen to us that we spotlight every week, but if they do, give these guys a call. Just find out. It's good to find out if they're interested in getting back out there, because that would be really cool to hear them do something new in 2025. But definitely check those guys out. Power metal is awesome, and again, what I've heard from these guys is really awesome as well. It's a shame that this was a band that hasn't continued on, at least since the mid 2000s. But we're going to talk about another band that has not continued on, but I think it'll make a lot of sense once I talk about it. Of course, my vault, we are going through Frontiers bands. Each and every week, we are picking, or actually every 2 weeks, we pick a new letter. And the first week, I pick a band from the letter. The second week, we have a randomizer pick a band. And we're going to get another a super group from Frontiers. I know that's shocking. This is the band Iconic, and this is the album Second Skin. You're going to recognize these names once I run them down. This is a Frontier supergroup that was built around the vocalist, around, let's see, Nathan James, who is the one that is, I guess, technically their lead vocalist, but they've built the rest of this band around him, which includes Michael Sweet on guitars and vocals, Joel Hoekstra on guitars, Marco Mendoza on bass, Tommy Aldridge on drums, and guesting, as always, your friend, our friend, Alessandro Del Vecchio on keyboards and backing vocals. Of course, Michael Sweet, best known for his work with Stryper. Joel Hoekstra has been in Whitesnake and Trans-Siberian Orchestra. Marco Mendoza has been with Thin Lizzy, Black Star Riders, The Dead Daisies, and Journey. And Tommy Aldridge also with Whitesnake, and it was current as of when this album was released. And then they put a young vocalist, which Frontiers tends to do, Nathan James, with the rest of this group. The idea, and again, this will not be a surprise, Serafino Perugino, the president and head of A&R for Frontiers, decided he wanted to put a band together around this vocalist. So he got with Alessandro Del Vecchio, and they came up with this. And as you would expect with this much talent in this band, it's really good. Unfortunately, as far as I can tell, this is the only album this band has released. And, we have seen that from time to time with Frontiers. They put together this really cool group, and they really only release like one thing. And then because so many of these guys are involved in other projects, everybody kind of goes their separate ways, and they don't ever bring them back together again. But maybe somewhere down the road, we could potentially see Iconic back together. But this album was great, as you would expect. And if you're a fan of these kind of super groups and melodic metal, you're going to like this for sure. Standout tracks include Fast As You Can, Second Skin, Nowhere to Run, and Worlds Apart. It's all great, as you would anticipate. But again, another Frontier supergroup that's been put together, or was put together for the purposes of this album. Not a huge surprise, but I mean, just a ton of talent involved in this project.
Yeah, absolutely. And I assume it's one of those things that if they ever decide to do something again, they basically will just pull members of Frontiers Records to put something else together. Because, I mean, Stryper's signed to Frontiers. They had an album that came out last year. Michael Sweet also had like a solo project with George Lynch that came out back in 2023 from Frontiers. So he's going to be around, like if you ever need to bring him back in the fold for something. But yeah, I wonder sometimes about this company, because I feel like that's part of why they sign some of these bands, is just so they can like
piece them out.
Yeah, basically like, hey, yeah, you can release your new Stryper album, but we also want you appearing with George Lynch on this album, and then over here with these guys. And then it's wild, but as a fan, it's definitely a cool thing.
Yeah, it's like having, you talked earlier about all the super groups that were put together at the Ozzy event, the Black Sabbath event. It's like, this company's able to do that almost at will. It's just like, oh, here's another album concept here. Oh, Alessandro Del Vecchio wrote another 12 songs, or whatever it may be, and they just end up putting all this together. But it was really good. No big surprise there. So definitely check out Iconic. Again, unfortunately, that's their only release, but it was definitely a good one. And we'll be moving on to the letter J next week. So we'll see what comes up in Frontiers music coming up next week. But that is our trip into the vault once again. It is time to get to the Power Trio, our hard rock hat trick. Each and every week we wrap up our program with our question of the week. And again, we have the link to our Discord in the chat on both YouTube and Twitch. Please join our Discord and answer this question. We want to know, because, music is, and I'm sure if you're listening to this podcast, this statement's going to be true for you as well. Music is so much a part of our lives, and oftentimes is almost an audio photograph of a time and a place in our lives. And I know over the years it's been so important to us. We've had family members that played music, actually did music at a relatively national level, in fact. So it's always been something that's important to us. And because of that, there are songs and albums that, take you back to a time and a place in your life. So I encourage you to jump in our Discord and let us know 3 songs that do take you back. And the thing about this question is it is very open-ended. So it could be 3 songs that remind you of last week. It could be 3 songs that remind you of, your high school prom, like whatever it might be. So I think because of that, I'm anticipating a limited number of overlaps with this particular question. So did we get any answers from Shane this week?
We did.
Awesome.
He gave me 3 as per the Power Trio framework. Number 1 for him, AC/DC, Shook Me All Night Long from 1980's Back in Black. That's probably a pretty common one for people, I think.
Yeah.
Number 2, Chimera, Venom Inside from their 2009 album, The Infection.
Probably less common.
Yeah, probably. And then number 3, Killswitch Engage, When Darkness Falls from 2004's The End of Heartache.
Interesting.
Classic album, great song.
Yeah.
And he basically just followed that up with the first one was about a girl, the second one was about a car ride, and the third one was about a concert. So
okay.
I know he's always been a huge Killswitch Engage fan, so I'm sure seeing them live was probably a big deal for him. So, makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. Really good stuff for Shane as always. Did his wife chime in this time? Or?
She did not.
Okay.
We did not get any.
Make sure we don't leave her out in case she gave us any answers.
Absolutely.
But, we know Chris has given us some answers in our Discord, so you want to run down what Chris has given us?
Yeah. Number 1 for Chris, we have For Whom the Bell Tolls by Metallica from their 1984 album Ride the Lightning. He said he played it nonstop when he was learning the drums, which, probably not a bad... And anything metal is going to be fun when you're learning the drums, I imagine. Number 2, Marilyn Manson, The Beautiful People from 1996's Antichrist Superstar. It's kind of funny, like when you discover like what relevance these songs have to you, because obviously, like I remember Antichrist Superstar coming out, it was a big deal. But for him, it was SmackDown's theme song when he first started getting into wrestling and wrestling video games. That was from August of 2001 to May of 2003, so a couple-year period there, and I also remember it from that as well. That was a great wrestling like opening theme song for any of their shows. Number 3 for him is the song Tear Away by Drowning Pool from their 2001 album Sinner. He was not going to pick Bodies, which we appreciate. This was the first album he bought to play when he got his license and his 1997 Cavalier. So
oh, wow.
That's a big deal. That's a big moment when you buy that first album, especially back then when we all had CD players in our cars. That was, what you listened to in your car was important. And, looking at the Wikipedia entry for that Drowning Pool album, it just the cover art is so 2001. it's classic, but yeah, those are the kind of songs that do take you back, because Drowning Pool was definitely something that existed in that period of time. It would be no different than any new metal band that took you back, whether it be like Disturbed or Taproot or any of those acts. Like, they're so iconic for a period of time. There's no reason why it shouldn't spark some sort of memory.
You mentioned Taproot. Like, every time I hear Poem on like Octane, like it doesn't necessarily take me back to like a specific time, but there's just a time when I remember that song being just huge, and I would sing along in the car all the time.
Great song.
But
Great song.
not one of my choices. But
he did also have an honorable mention. Plush from Stone Temple Pilots from their 1992 album Core. It was a song that he played with his band that he had with his brothers a lot. So obviously good reason that would bring back memories and take you back as well. Yeah,
for sure. Great picks, Chris. Really enjoyed those.
Yeah.
It made me think of an honorable mention pick with Chris, but we'll talk about, for me, with Chris. And he already, if he's listening, he already knows what it is now that I said that. But we'll get to that in a moment. But Mike, you got some picks as well.
Yeah, so pick number 1 for me, I couldn't not have a Megadeth song on here just because how big of a fan I've been of them and just how big of a band they were when I was getting into heavy music. But I didn't pick a heavy song, weirdly enough. I picked Use the Man from 1997's album Cryptic Writings. It's one of those songs that it's a pretty simple chord progression on the guitar, acoustic, so you kind of learn to play it relatively early. And I remember for whatever reason, like my buddies and I would play the song, and I had this audio file that Osborne had saved years ago of him playing it and badgering Todd for not singing along. I don't know why, but I always think back to that. And as he's trying, Todd's just like, yeah, I don't know. And then you have Osborne on the files like, well, Mike can do it. It's a memory that takes me back. What can I say?
For sure. That's as soon as you said that, I remembered that audio file. So,
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Number 2, I'm going with Queen's Another One Bites the Dust from 1980's The Game. Takes me back to high school. Had a teacher, biology and physics, who would play that song anytime you'd have a quiz in his class. And due to that, it always comes back to me. So can't really avoid that.
Yeah, as soon as you said that, I definitely remembered that. Really great teacher.
Yeah, great teacher for sure, and great taste in music at the same time. Number 3 is kind of like a whole album kind of thing almost, and it's pretty much anything off of Aerosmith's Big Ones compilation album.
That's a great album.
Had it in the mid-90s, kind of at the end of that run of Aerosmith in the 80s and 90s, where they just had so many great songs, and really kind of my favorite version of the band. But it just takes me back to that time period. For some reason, it brings back memories of like going sledding out at that hill, like down the street, and playing football in the yard and whatnot. It's all this like classic Xennial activity stuff that for some reason is now tied to this album. I can't help but think about it when I hear it. It's just great memories, but not something that you typically think you'd associate with Aerosmith. So I don't know.
That's true. That is interesting, but that's a great album.
Yeah.
Definitely one of my favorites, and kind of encompasses my favorite era of the band, which again, depending on your age, that's going to vary. To me, they remind me a lot in the way of Chicago. Like, depending on when you got into Chicago, you probably had certain favorites. Now, I will say, as I've gotten older, I appreciate the old stuff more with Chicago than I do the old Aerosmith. But that's,
I think no matter what era your favorite is, there are going to be those handful of songs from other eras you enjoy.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, Aerosmith had some great songs in the 70s, too. I mean, Dream On, it might be their best song, even though it's not something created in that 80s and 90s space, but it's undeniable.
Yeah, 100%. So great stuff for sure. Honorable mention, we'll throw it out there first because you mentioned it when we talking about Chris. I just could not help the moment you were giving his answers. I was just thinking the moment that popped into my head was the song "Desert Rose" by Sting that we absolutely listened to nonstop at our security job, just where I really got to know Chris. I'm not saying it was a good song, but it definitely, like, when I hear that song, I think of that crappy security job that we had while I was finishing up school, while he was finishing up school.
That was a huge song.
That was everywhere. But yeah, so that was honorable mention. All 3 of my songs are songs from my college days. The first time when I started at college at Ohio University, and one of them was a song that was played nonstop in the cafeteria, and the other 2 were songs that were played on our college radio station before they became hits. And because of that, they're not all great songs, but they're definitely ones I equate with that time in my life. The first one is "Push" by Matchbox 20. They had these video screens up in the lunchroom where you would go get your meals, and I swear to you, this song played like 1 out of every 3 times there was a song that played on there. I heard that nonstop. I have a good appreciation for Matchbox 20 and Rob Thomas, but this song will always make me think of just that song just being burned into my head while sitting there eating meals at Ohio University.
I don't think we had any idea at that point in time just how huge Rob Thomas was going to be. He was just the singer of some post-grunge band.
Yeah, 100%. He's had a phenomenal career. So, and again, they have 3 a.m. That's still one of my favorite songs of theirs, and obviously they had a lot of really good stuff after that. But "Push" is one that I hear it. And again, so many of these songs, like, I can listen to them now, and it's like, you have that nostalgia. You can listen to it. But there was a time where I wanted nothing to do with that song. But it is number one. The other two were songs that I played in my time at ACRN, the Rock Lobster in Athens, Ohio, back in the old days of college radio stations. And so often we would get songs, especially in that era, from bands who hadn't made it yet. We would get the CDs, and it wasn't like we had, back when I worked at a radio station where we had these playlists and we had to play certain songs, and they were, with the record labels wanted them to play. We were just getting CDs and playing tracks. So, odds are these two bands I'm going to mention, we probably played their entire album on ACRN. But, of course, these were the two hit songs. And, again, I'm not going to sit here and say these are two of my favorite songs, but they immediately take me back to my college radio days. It's Inside Out by Eve 6.
That's a great song.
It is a great song.
I didn't appreciate it initially, but man, that is a great song.
And Sex and Candy by Marcy's Playground.
Marcy Playground is, I don't know how that ever became a hit or how they ever had hits. I mean, they're right up there with Cake for me as far as bands. I don't know why people like them.
I feel like there's an overlap. There's a Venn diagram of Cake fans and Marcy Playground fans that overlap in that stretch. And again, I'm not, Inside Out I do like. That is actually a really good song. I'm sure I didn't appreciate it. I'm sure we overplayed it on ACRN. Marcy Playground, Sex and Candy, yeah. Again,
I want to listen to that album and find something redeeming about it.
There's your channel.
They have to have better songs than Sex and Candy.
You would think so. That would be an interesting concept for the vault as we go through albums with one-hit wonder albums and find another track off of that album to spotlight on the podcast, because
Rolling Stone album guy gave that a 2.5 out of 5.
That's generous, probably. But, again, those three songs remind me of college. My Ohio University days, I went to OU for 2 years. I was burned out on school and came home. Things worked out in the end, but, I love Athens, Ohio. It was such a really cool place, and that got me even farther into broadcasting and everything else. So, I have a fond memory for those, even if those songs are not all the best songs. But again, that's kind of that nostalgia of that given time. But I want to know if you find a redeeming song off of that Marcy Playground album.
I just feel like any alternative rock band of that era, it couldn't have all been just kind of slow, plodding stuff like Sex and Candy. There had to be something upbeat that was probably pretty good. I don't know what that is because I've not heard any of the other songs off this album, but I'm sure there's something.
I would hope so. We'll report back. If you're a fan of the band, let us know. And you can do that by joining our Discord and letting us know. And let us know what your three are. Are there three songs in your life that take you back to a time and a place? That's another one of those categories that we probably can revisit somewhere down the road, because there's lots of great songs out there. But with that being said, it is time to wrap up this edition of the Hard Rock Empire for the music of June the 27th. We appreciate you joining us once again. A reminder, we'll be back next Sunday night, 7 o'clock Eastern Time. We'll be talking about the music of July the 4th, so we look forward to having you back next week, same time. And again, join the Discord, share our posts, subscribe, like our stuff. Again, it doesn't cost anything, but we really do appreciate the support, and the more subscribers we can get, the more followers we can get, the more really cool things we can do on the podcast. A big thanks to Mike, as always, for putting all this together. Big thanks to Chris and Shane for sharing their answers. A big thanks to Stove Lake Media for their continued support of our podcast, and a big thanks to you for listening whenever and wherever you are listening. But that is going to wrap things up. We'll be back again next Sunday night at 7 o'clock Eastern Time on Twitch and on YouTube. But until then, don't forget to join the Empire, the Nerdcast Empire.